Hey everyone, Arloon here, coming you with another guide, this time for Tartaglia, one of the most complex characters in the entire game. Before we get into it, one thing you should know is currently there is no best artifact set for Tartaglia because the Hydro set hasn't come out yet. That said, there are a couple of artifacts that is pretty good on him that you can use while you're waiting for the artifact set to come out. Probably 1.2, hopefully it comes out during Zhongli, but realistically, it'll probably come out during 1.2. It'd be nice though if it does come out sooner. So, Tartaglia is a very complex character, and we're gonna go through a lot of suggestions for him in both artifacts and weapons, as well as team compositions. But my video is already coming out a little later than most, so you probably already know much about Tartaglia and how he works. So I won't be covering his skills too much. I have him at Constellation 0, so I won't be covering his constellations, but just know that if you have a Constellation 6 Tartaglia, it plays extremely different to a Constellation 0 Tartaglia. So we'll go over some of the artifacts, weapons, and team compositions, as well as explaining some things about his talents, but not fully in depth, because if you've had Tartaglia for already how long, you should already know how he works somewhat, right? Okay. So getting into it, like I said, I have him at Constellation 0 because there's no money for that. As for his talents, you can actually level his E or his Q first to the highest that you can, because there are multiple ways to play Childe, and all of them are pretty good and pretty fun. So you can either go E or Q. Increasing E will not only increase his normal attacks when his daggers are out, it also increases the Riptide slash damage when his E's are out. As for his normal attacks, it has also different damage for its Riptide, Flash, and Burst. So his Riptides actually have different instances of damage. They're all not the same kind of Riptide, which is very weird. So if you're using a charged aim shot, you're gonna get the Riptide Burst and Flash. If you're using the daggers, you're gonna get the Riptide Slash. So it's very different depending on what you use. His Q as well has a Riptide Blast damage if you use it on melee form. So lots of different Riptides, a lot of different instances. This only means that he will be applying Hydro so fast that he will almost always be the aura character. Each of his abilities have different Riptide procs, which means as a main DPS, you actually need to upgrade all of his talents in order to get maximum Riptide damage. You can't just upgrade his E and expect all the Riptides to do decent damage. They're all going to be doing different types of damage, or rather they're all doing Hydro damage, but they're all different instances of damage. So going for artifacts, we actually have a lot of artifacts to talk about here. One thing is I'm using an attack artifact because of the event. I couldn't artifact grind too much, but until now I still do not have a Hydro piece except for this 3-star. So like I said in the team building guide, if you have a Hydro piece, use that, it is better. That said, going for the artifacts right now, this is what I think is a decent artifact set for him for now, before the Hydro set comes out. 2-piece Noblesse and 2-piece Gladiator. The 2-piece Noblesse is just going to increase the damage of your ults, which his ult already do so much damage, so increasing that is even better. It also increases the Riptide damage of the melee ult, so that just doubles the increase. The Gladiator set is just a 2-piece set, is a nice attack increase through his overall attack, though it's not always the best, it's still decent. One other set that you can actually use with him is the Wanderer set, because it'll increase the charge attack damage of his dagger form. This means you're gonna have to do a lot more charge attacks though, which means it'll drain your stamina a little more, so you have to be careful with that. But This is an option. If you have a 4-piece Wanderer set that has nice substats, then you can go for that until the Hydro set does come out. Just note that the Elemental Mastery on him won't work as well except for certain setup comps and certain setup attacks, which I will go over in a bit. Other sets that people have been speculating that could be good on him is the Retracing Bolide Set. This one I don't really recommend because Childe is already such a complex character. Adding another layer of complexity to him is just very difficult. It's just gonna be an annoying task having your shield up all the time. Not to mention, if you have your shield up, you have to remember Childe is a melee character most of the time, and his bow attacks aren't really that good, but he'll be close range most of the time. That means you have a higher chance of getting hit. And if your shield goes down, there goes your attack bonus, there goes your damage. So I don't really recommend Retracing Bolide because it adds so much more complexity. You have to know when you can use your shield, when your E is up, because you have to remember your E has a long cooldown the longer you use it. There is just so much more to factor in if you use this set. That said though, this could change with the introduction of Zhongli, because with what we know, Zhongli has the longest shield in the game, longest duration of shield in the game. He also has the highest modifiers for his shield, so he could potentially have an almost near invulnerable shield. So with that, the Retracing Bolide could work on Childe, but that said, you have to have Zhongli, which is another Herculean task on its own. So, long TLDR, I don't recommend the Retracing Bolide set. It's a nice bonus to your attacks, but again, it's going to be adding so much more complexity into the character that I don't recommend it. Another set that you could use is the Martial Artist set. The problem with this though is that it is 4-star only. I don't recommend using the Martial Artist either, because while you are indeed gaining some damage, you are losing out on a lot more. That said, if you are below AR 35 or below AR 40 and you don't have access to 5-star artifacts yet, then you can go for the 4-piece Martial Artist set. It's going to be good on Childe if you're below AR 40. One more set is the Gambler set. This one is kinda iffy because again, it doesn't have a 5-piece 5-star set. So while technically it could work, because you could potentially have unlimited E uptime, I haven't tested it, it's still very difficult to recommend because, like I said, it has no 5-star set and you are gonna lose a lot of damage. Plus, you have to get the kill using Childe, so you have to use your bow to get the kill because your elemental skill won't be on cooldown. I also not sure if this will proc if you get a kill using your E, so it has a lot of caveats to it that I don't recommend. So for now, the 2 pieces that I can recommend is a 4-piece Wanderer set or the 2-piece Noblesse and 2-piece Glad. As for the 4-piece Gladiator, you cannot use this because this doesn't count towards his attacks because he uses a bow, so you actually won't get this bonus. So do not go for a 4-piece Gladiator set. It's not gonna work. That is his artifacts. So next we're gonna go over some of his weapons, which is actually pretty nice because depending on what weapon you use on him, you can potentially play him in many different playstyles that are pretty unique on its own. For now, the weapon that I use is Rust because it increases his normal attack damage, including his E, by 40%, which is really nice. However, it does say that it increases aim shot damage by 10%. This also includes charge attacks when you are using your E. So, if you are using a Wanderer set, I recommend not actually using the Rust because it'll contradict the bonus of the Wanderer set if you are using the Rust. For a free-to-play option, you can actually also use Prototype Crescent, but it's okay. It's just not that great because it forces you to do an aim shot or hit a weak point with a charge attack in order for you to get its bonus. It's nice when you're going in because you can use an aim shot first and then go in, but for certain places like say Abyss where you're immediately put into action, it might not work as well. The compound bow is pretty okay as well. It's just that it has physical damage, which you won't get a lot of benefit on if you're using this E. But if you already have visual, chances are you already have an upgraded compound bow. If you don't have any other weapon, then it is okay to use. This is because you still get the attack speed bonus, you still get the attack bonus from the compound bow, and sometimes you actually are forced to use the bow with Childe, so the physical damage doesn't completely go to waste. It just doesn't benefit his E too much, so it's not that useful for Childe. So the next weapon for him is the Viridescent Hunt. One of his best weapons, to be honest, because of the vacuum effect working with his E. This means if you use his E and there are a bunch of enemies, you can pull them all together and they bunch up really close, so you can hit all of them with your normal attacks using your E, thus doing more Riptide and just murdering everything within that vacuum. It is insanely good, as well as the substat is critical rate, which is one of Childe's most important substats because of his talent, which gives Riptide whenever you crit. This means the more crits you do, the higher the chance that you're gonna do Riptides, produce Riptides on enemies, and then do Riptides with your E, thus increasing your AoE damage all throughout. The damage is so good that even if you only have one other enemy, if you pull them into the vacuum, you're gonna already be doing almost double the damage with the Riptide procs and just hitting both of them at the same time. His E at normal attacks do have decent range, it's just not really that amazing, but it's still decent range enough, and the Viridescent Hunt just helps with that immensely. One caveat is if you actually have the Rust with the high refinement rank, the Rust could actually outdamage the Viridescent Hunt quite substantially if you have good crit rate substats. If you can get about 50% crit rate without having to use the Viridescent Hunt, then I would recommend Rust, as you will be doing more damage. It's just that you're gonna lose out on the vacuum, which can be a detriment, but in my experience it's not really that needed if you have characters like Venti or Sucrose. But if you don't, then the Viridescent Hunt will outperform the Rust in the case that there's more enemies. But if there's less enemies, then Rust will outperform Viridescent Hunt. So basically, if you need to choose between Rust and Viridescent Hunt, all you have to do is look at your crit rate. If you have maybe 25 to 30% crit rate, go for the Viridescent Hunt so you can get that 50%. If you already have 50% crit rate without having to use the Viridescent Hunt, then you can use Rust. This is also depending on you if you want to use a crit rate hat or a crit damage hat. Of course, if you use a crit damage hat, your damage is going to go up exponentially. But if you're going to use a crit rate hat, you're going to be more consistent in your crits. This also applies to having 100% crit rate, which is entirely possible with the Viridescent Hunt. So if you're going for 100% crit rate, you're still going to be, theoretically, you're going to be outperforming if you're using a crit damage hat. That said, it depends on your crit rate. Just check which. If you need crit rate, Viridescent Hunt. If you don't, Rust. Next weapon for him is actually the Stringless, which I normally wouldn't recommend on him because it gives elemental mastery, and elemental mastery is not really that good on Childe because he is usually the aura character, meaning he won't be triggering reactions. That means his elemental mastery is kinda useless. However, if you want to use him as a burst character, burst ultimate type of character, then you can use the Stringless and it will boost his damage by a lot. That said though, be aware that this type of setup build is not really, in my opinion, it's not fun because you have to make sure that everything's set up and then you just use your ultimate and just kill it. It takes away all the fun in the battle itself. You also see, you've probably seen YouTubers do 300k, 400k damage with this kind of setup as well. However, you have those probably don't show the amount of times that it failed because it did not crit. So this set, while this setup is nice because it's strong, it relies heavily that you get a crit in order to do the maximum amount of damage. Which means if you don't crit, then you're a sitting duck because you have no ultimate. You're using an elemental mastery weapon. Your damage is not that good. So just keep that in mind. But if you do want to get those big numbers, Stringless is the weapon that you want. That said, all these 4-star weapons are useless in the face of the 5-star weapon Skyward Harp. It is the best bow in the game currently for any main DPS character that uses a bow. So if you have the Skyward Harp, use that because it's just gonna outdamage any other 4-star bow in its just because of its skill and substat and its abilities. So if you have the Skyward Harp, just use that. As for some team compositions with him, you can use him with mainly any kind of pyro character just so that you can set up his ultimate to do vaporize damage. The best one would be Bennett because he can use his Q, hit a lot of the enemies, and then you can just follow up with Tartaglia's E and then Q just to kill everything, or just his bow Q in order to add a lot of the marks on the enemies. Another one would be good is D-Luke, because you can use D-Luke to push all the enemies into one side and then you can follow up with Tartaglia. But again, it's kind of iffy how they work, but the best combos would still be Sucrose, Venti, anybody that can group the enemies together, unless you have the Viridescent Hunt, which you can use so that Tartaglia can do it himself. Another decent combo is Beidou and Fischl, because Beidou and Fischl's Electro Charge actually lingers long enough where Tartaglia can trigger Electro Charge maybe once or twice before it disappears. So Beidou's Q and Fischl's Oz can actually help you produce some Electro Charge reactions, but for other reactions we don't currently have any characters that can put a lot of vaporize or pyro auras onto the enemies and do consistent vaporize damage. Just doesn't exist yet. So if you need team building guides, you can check out my Tartaglia team building guide video. But for this one, you can use Beidou, you can use Fischl. Not much has changed from the team building guide because there really isn't too much characters that can support Tartaglia at the moment in terms of reaction. So that is team compositions for Tartaglia. Please do check out the team building guide for a more in-depth look at that. And that is Childe, one of the most complex characters right now. He has a lot of weapon choices, he has a lot of artifact choices as well, but currently I do suggest not farming any god tier artifacts for him since the Hydro set hasn't come out yet, and it'll probably be the best artifact set for him. As for the weapons, just use what you have, but at the same time check what you need. So if you have the Rust, then you can use the Rust. But if you have the Rust and Viridescent Hunt, then just check what stats that you need to supplement in order to achieve at least 50% crit rate and how they will work. It also changes your playstyle by a lot, because if you have Rust, you don't have much skills to pull enemies together. If you have the Viridescent Hunt, you can use just Childe to pull enemies together, which is a very nice combo for him. If you like that kind of thing, the Viridescent Hunt is really good. If you have the Stringless, you can use the Stringless to set up attacks in order to do an insane amount of damage. If you, but you have to do the setups. If you have the Skyward Harp, just use the Skyward Harp because it is still the 5-star weapon and it is better than anything else. I hope that was a little informative. We had a lot to cover, a lot of different weapons, a lot of different artifacts. But like I said, Childe is a very complex character. He plays mostly as an AoE main DPS, so single target, he's not gonna beat any of the god tier DPS, main DPS characters like Diluc. But in a group, he is going to do a lot more damage. If you have the ability to pull multiple enemies together, like a Venti, Sucrose, then those are really good on him. And if you haven't watched the team building guide, there are other suggestions there as well. Thank you so much for watching. If that was helpful to you, please do leave a like, please do subscribe on the channel. It really helps out. Thank you so much again. I stream on Twitch if you want to see. I don't stream every day, but I will try to eventually once I reach 50 followers. We're almost there. Thank you so much if you have followed in my Twitch channel. Again, thank you for watching. Goodbye.